Okay, hello and welcome to another Water Cooler Wednesday. Today we are going to be diving into the world of securing and safeguarding our crypto assets. So, just as kind of like a general overview, the the wallets that we talk about in crypto assets are akin to bank accounts in a way because ultimately they are a record of transactions going in and out of that specific wallet. You can see based on different querying databases, which we'll talk about in a little bit, such as EtherScan, all the assets that are located in that account, what their value is, and every bit of activity that's come in and out of that wallet. Now, the main difference between a wallet and a bank account is, for one, you have to self custody it. So we'll talk about the importance of that and kind of the steps that you can take to do that. But also, there's no like snapshot like monthly reconciliation statement that you get, right? So no monthly bank statements. We see everything that's in there, but if you want to know what was in your wallet at a certain time, there are tools that will allow you to take snapshots historically. But a lot of times you gotta know what was in there at certain points in times. So you can either literally take a snapshot of your wallet of that day on the day of, or like I said, there are some tools that allow you to do that. So um, another key difference is, as I alluded to before, was that um, wallets in the crypto world are generally self custody. There are exchange wallets where if you're just trading on an exchange, the exchange has custody of your assets. So if they get hacked or if they go bankrupt or whatever, you could have trouble accessing your funds. But the safest and best way to store your crypto assets personally are to create and generate what's called a non-custodial wallet. And so really what a non-custodial wallet allows you to do is, there are providers like MetaMask, Trust Wallet, Coinbase has a wallet as well. There's lots of different wallets. You can kind of research on your own what the best are. But really what all these different wallets do is they really just provide you with a user interface to be able to interact with that private public key combination that you're generating on chain. So a key kind of trade-off here is that because you're self-custodying these assets, you have to take your own security into your own hands, right? Because there's no bank that's securing that money on your behalf. You have to do it on your own behalf. So you can take various different steps. You can, if you have a hot wallet, which just indicates that it's connected to the internet, so it's hot. That's kind of like the first step in securing your crypto assets. It's generally, we talk about different security measures in the crypto space, similar to how you would in the TradFi space, right? If you have a wallet in your pocket, like a physical wallet with cash on you, that's obviously less secure than the money that's in your bank account, right? Or the money that's in a bank vault or a safe or things like that. So we don't walk around with 90% of our wealth in our pocket. We walk around with a fraction of a percent of what our wealth is in our pocket. Now it depends on your own financial situation, but the point is that we're willing to take on that extra risk of carrying around money in our pocket for the added convenience that it provides, right? If I want to go and I want to pay for something in cash, having some cash on me is a convenient thing to do, right? Or if it's a credit card or whatever, I keep those things on my person so that I can interact more readily. The same kind of analogy is true for a hot wallet, right? Because it's hot, it's connected to the internet. So if your computer gets hacked or things like that, you are at risk of losing those funds. But so as a result, you want to keep a small amount of your funds in that wallet. So um, if you look at kind of more secure measures like a cold storage wallet or a hardware wallet, a lot of these are allowing you to store your private keys, which is what secures your wallet, offline. So that's part of the reason why it's called a cold wallet. Now, hardware wallets are slightly different than cold storage wallets. Basically, a cold storage wallet is just like, it could be a USB drive, it could be a piece of paper, it could be metal engraved with your private key or your seed phrase on it. But it's just it's a method that is stored offline. So in order to access that wallet, you have to have that physical thing, whether it's the the private key or whatever. A hardware wallet stores your private key on an actual device that's manufactured by different companies. So as a result, you're if it's an open source company that you're buying your hardware wallet from, that code is being battle tested every single day because the code itself that secures that wallet is open to the public, so anyone can view it and anyone can kind of battle test it. White hat hackers can test out and try to break into it, and it's under constant scrutiny. So there was a recent kind of kerfluffle with Ledger, who is they have their the software that backs their hardware devices is closed source, and they've revealed recently by unrolling a new feature, which was basically allowing you to recover your funds if you ever lost your seed phrase or things like that. By unveiling this new product, it kind of made it apparent that there was a backdoor within their software, and that your private keys had the ability to be sent to to three different kind of third parties. So I say all this to say that when you're choosing a hardware device, which makes things a little bit more convenient than a cold storage, so they have similar levels of security, but a hardware device allows you to interact more seamlessly with your web-based wallet while still kind of maintaining that same level of security. You still have to approve transactions on the physical device, but when you're choosing a hardware wallet, you have to be kind of wary of what's going on within the code. Something that's closed source is not verifiable by the people who know software coding and things like that, right? I myself wouldn't be able to tell you what the flaws are in any code, but there are people who can, and they a lot of times spend time battle testing these different options. So something like a Trezor wallet is open source in their software, so a lot of times people are starting to gravitate more towards that because there's fewer issues that are hidden under the surface. And you know what? Ultimately, the Ledger service could have zero flaws outside of what we know of today, and outside of this software. But ultimately, we have to take their word for what they're telling us, right? Because it's closed source, we can't go and verify. And as accountants, as compliance people, I know Lourdes, you're on the call as well. Like ultimately, we want to trust but verify, right? We want to make sure that we're going out and we're kind of making sure the information that we're told in our professions is valid, right? So that's kind of the baseline that I wanted to talk about with this stuff. Ultimately, if you lose your private key, whether it's a hot wallet or a cold storage wallet or even a hardware wallet, outside of what we've talked about with Nano X, those funds are gone. So that's another key difference here between bank accounts. Like, right, if you lose access to your password for your bank account for your login, you can recover that because there's a third party you can go to have them send you a new password after they verify your identity. And this is kind of what Ledger Nano X Ledger was introducing with the Nano X upgrade with the recover function, is just like a third party or three different third parties that would allow you to access those funds. Now, people in the crypto market don't always want that ability because then it opens you up to someone hacking those people, or those people handing over your data to governments based on subpoenas or things like that. So it kind of eliminates your ability to fully hold and access your funds and know that they're completely safe in your possession. So I kind of wanted to open up the floor now at this point and kind of hear from someone like Lourdes and kind of what you think of all this and kind of my thoughts on trust but verify. But what are your thoughts on this, Lourdes?
Well, non-custodial wallets is a compliance and a law enforcement nightmare because we have no control. They're not vetted. I have clients who build blockchain platforms and offer custodial, non-custodial wallets on their platform, and we have to label them as high risk. Any user that opens an account using non-custodial wallet, we flag them as high risk. And it frustrates some of the engineers because when we flag someone as high risk, their KYC, KYB onboarding takes longer. So it's a nightmare. Compliance, I can tell you right now, compliance people and investigators do not like non-custodial wallet platforms. We don't. We rather have custodial wallet platforms and work with vendors like Coinbase who have control of the keys, and work with them because those keys are vetted. And a lot of custodial companies like Coinbase, they vet the user and then we vet the user, so they're double vetted. So I'm all for non-custodial wallets if you're not a bad actor, but we don't like them. We have no control. And
like
it's hard to follow them. It's hard to vet them, and it's hard to investigate them.
Yeah, from a compliance perspective, that's the challenge, right? Because people are if you onboard fiat into a wallet, like let's say I do an over-the-counter trade with someone and I pay them cash in person and they send me a Bitcoin, there's no trail of me on chain. So from a compliance perspective, that's a nightmare. There are a lot of tools like Chainalysis and other tools that allow you to kind of gather data on people to more easily identify them on chain. But if someone did an over-the-counter transaction like that, there's really no way to track them, from my understanding of the current forensics right now on chain. So yeah, it prevents a compliance challenge for sure. From like a freedom of funds standpoint, people that's why people gravitate towards it, right? Because it's like, for that same reason, they're not scrutinized as much. Like I said, though, Chainalysis, if you've ever been KYC'd anywhere, you probably are identifiable on chain relatively easily. But that's interesting to hear that. So when you talk about flagging them, that must be a lot of people, because a lot of people in the crypto space do open. Is it just if you've never KYC'd, or is it if you've just ever opened a non-custodial wallet?
Ever open a non-custodial wallet. All users, the clients that we have, all users are vetted. And sometimes it poses a challenge because the argument is, well, they've only onboarded and they only transacted less than $1,000 crypto, right?
Yeah.
And according to regulations, US regulations and MiCA in Europe, if it's 1,000 crypto over, then you vet them. But I'm a firm believer. I don't care if it's $1 worth of crypto, you're going to be vetted. So compliance and a lot of fintech startups, we go back and forth with that. Like, no, we want our users to onboard within 10 seconds. I'm like, well, compliance doesn't take 10 seconds, it takes longer. So yeah, we go back and forth.
Yeah. It poses a lot of challenges for businesses that are looking to be agile and things like that. But as you say, like, in order to be compliant, we need to take avid steps. So yeah, it's funny to hear about the dichotomies between companies that want to act fast and then also want to be compliant, because there's a lot of challenges there, especially when you're dealing with anything that touches the U.S. as your specialty there. That's interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately, do you guys see any, like, from a compliance perspective, is there any added risk for a company that only interacts with centralized platforms? Like, for example, if a company was involved with something like Celsius or something like that ended up going bankrupt, or in the compliance function, are you not as focused on the risk management standpoint things?
We always focus on risk management. There's a risk with everything, whether it's centralized or decentralized. And it's funny, I have a lot of startups that say, well, we're not operating, or we're not offering products and services in the United States. I'm like, that's great. I understand. You don't have to be a licensed crypto exchange. I get that. You don't have to register as a money service business with FinCEN. Yes, I understand that. But if you're going to offer fiat conversion involving the US dollar, you're going to need to partner with a US correspondent bank. Anything with a US dollar is an implication. So a lot of startups, and again, they don't know. That's why they hire compliance officers like us. And we remind them, okay, you're not registered in the US, you're not licensed in the US, that's fine. You're registered in Greece or Bulgaria, wherever. But if your platform that's registered in Europe is going to offer US dollar conversion, you're going to need a US correspondent bank. Where are you going to get the US dollar from?
Right. Well, you wouldn't be able to partner with a a bank in that jurisdiction that then holds US dollars, or would you
You
or
can. It depends what
yeah,
jurisdictions, right? The word depends. Our clients hate that word. I'm like, well, it depends. Where are you going to offer services and products? If we're talking Russia, that's a different story. If you're talking
right,
Greece, yes, Greece, why not? So it
yeah,
depends on the geographical location. But
yeah,
I always remind startups, you say US in any language, in any conversation, you're going to hear from us. So even if it's one US dollar, that's a US implication.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it poses it creates a lot more like it creates slowdowns, but I mean that's the price of getting compliant within the US.
Correct.
Um, so from my perspective, the other things I wanted to touch upon is just kind of like within companies, how do we secure these private keys, right? If we are going down the non-custodial route, and a lot of crypto companies do, you know, how are we safeguarding these keys? Are we using multi-sig? Are we using like multi-signatures so that multiple people within the organization have to sign off? What's the threshold for that? Who holds the actual private keys within the organization? That's a huge implication as well. Is it all held by the CFO? Well, that produces some risks as well, because now you're concentrating all of the control there. And ultimately, we like to see, with in the same vein that we have, our hot wallets, like our walking around money, and we have our cold storage wallets, our more of our treasury stuff. We want, the bulk of the funds, whether it's like the main treasury, to be secured as well as possible, as well as those available in the space. And that could be an enterprise custody solution, which I'm guessing Lourdes would be more of a fan of, just because it's a centralized entity that's taking custody of your assets, but then requires some verification on your own part, and in order to release those funds, whether it's a traditional multi-sig, like Gnosis Safe offers, where you have, let's say it's 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 sign-offs to be able to get funds to move. So these are some key kind of considerations that you have to take into thought when you're operating in a crypto asset space versus the traditional finance space. Like, right, we have multiple signers of checks in TradFi. The same sort of thing with multi-sig, except it's a little bit more complicated, because someone could forge a signature or things like that. It's a little bit more secure from a multi-sig standpoint. But are you familiar with enterprise custody solutions at all, Lourdes? And do you guys recommend them? Okay, so companies like Ledger will do enterprise level custody solutions, so that it's like, it probably would be something that you guys would appreciate from a compliance perspective more than like something like a multi-sig wallet on chain, because ultimately you can use a third party to help custody those assets. Sometimes people push back against it within the crypto community, because it kind of goes against the ethos of the community a little bit, but it can be an effective kind of bridge between those two, from a compliance perspective, but also from a kind of security perspective. But
I see your point, and I like multi-sig. It takes longer, but
right.
And again, as I mentioned, pushback between onboarding a user immediately versus compliance delays. But I'm all for multi-sig. But another challenge that I've saw with startups, and I'm not going to name any startups or any crypto custodian platforms, but I had a client who did not want a compliance team, because he relied on the crypto custodian to do their compliance. I'm like, you can't do that. It's a compliance violation to rely on a third-party vendor, because they have a vested interest in your company. Of course, they're going to pass everybody. So there's a bias there.
Yeah.
So not only did he use one vendor, but he used two crypto custodians, and he thought partnering with two crypto custodians will trump a compliance team. I'm like, no, you cannot rely on vendors to be your compliance team.
Right.
And that's an actual discussion I had with the CEO.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean, the thing is that a lot of times these CEOs, they're young people. Like they're just like, they see an opportunity and they're moving on it, and they don't necessarily understand these broader implications that they have. And they could be very good at going to market, but you know, if you go to market really fast without having anything in mind from a compliance perspective, you can get yourself in trouble for sure.
Correct. And they are young. And so the young thing, I get it, because another problem I saw with the CEO, his best friend was the legal counsel. I'm like, general counsel and the CEO cannot be best friends. To me, I see another FTX. I said, are you guys roommates? I literally said that out of sarcasm.
Yeah.
Are you guys roommates? Are you dating each other's girlfriends, whatever? And I said, that could be an issue. That's a conflict of interest. Because every time I disagree, because my job is to disagree with the CEO, but give a reason why I'm disagreeing and justify my disagreement.
Yeah.
But then you got his best friend, the lawyer, disagreeing with me because I'm disagreeing with his best friend.
Right.
You see the conflict there?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys are in trouble. And, you're paying me to tell you this.
Right. Right. I mean, ultimately,
sorry, not to go off on tangent, but
no. But it all makes an impact, right? And ultimately, it's all good and well to go into business with your friends, but when it's an issue like that where you're getting advice from your friend on something that you should be able to question them on it. You should be able to, having that history together complicates the discussions that you can have, and it biases the discussions you can have. So.
Yes, and these young men are in their early 30s. And again, I'm not an ageist. I'm all for young and ambitious energy. But you have to really trust people with years of experience that I have. And plus, this gentleman actually questioned my CIA experience because he's telling me that a certain country wasn't a threat. I'm like, I'm not basing this on my CIA experience. Yes, I am, but I can justify by Treasury OFAC reporting. Here's the link.
Yeah.
A sanctioned country, you can't go there. So anyway, since you brought up young professionals.
Yeah, and I mean, I know a lot of them that are in the space, and it's that's a big challenge, is that they quickly come into money, and they quickly come into these new businesses, and they don't always understand the implications of it. So they need people like us to help guide them. So
yes, absolutely. And I always remind them, I said, we're not your enemy. We're here to keep you off the New York Times front page.
Right. And sometimes it's hard to hear, and sometimes it's not the answer that they want. I'm no stranger to giving people answers that they don't want but need to hear, especially coming from the cannabis space. You're constantly telling people, especially with regards to 280E and things like that, hey, we can't do things this way. I know that the guy next down the street is doing it this way, but they're going to get hammered with fraud violations and audits and things like that. They're gonna be bummed that happened down the road, because you just can't do that. So people don't always want to hear the information that we got to tell them, but that's part of our duty, right? That's part of our job, and that's why they're hiring us, and that's why they trust in our expertise. And the clients that I have kept, they trust me, and then when I tell them, they ask me, they're like, hey, are we taking advantage of this? Oh, okay, we can't. Okay, I trust your opinion. This is what I'm bummed that we don't get this benefit, but I trust your opinion. So, yeah.
Security is expensive and time consuming. Bottom line.
Yeah.
And plus compliance, we don't generate revenue. We're overhead.
Yeah, exactly. Same with the accounting department, accounting and finance. But yeah. Well, that was the bulk of the conversation I wanted to have. If there's anything else anyone else wants to add here, kind of not a simple discussion, but one that I think is really important to be had, because ultimately it's the foundation of where we're at in the crypto space, and it's really great to have a compliance perspective as well, because sometimes people butt heads within the crypto space from custodial to non-custodial side, viewpoint. But ultimately, if you want to comply with the US, they're going to want to know everything about you, right? They're going to want to have you KYC. And it sounds like if you're operating with a non-custodial wallet or interacting with those, you're going to get scrutinized more, because you're someone who's kind of operating outside of the traditional finance system. So that comes with added risks. So very interesting stuff. Thanks so much for joining us, Lourdes. And always a pleasure to have you on these calls. But
Thank you, guys.
yeah, thanks again.